The Great Gatsby, Chapter 4. On Sunday morning, while church bells rang in the nearby towns, many people came back to Gatsby's house. His big garden was full of happy, laughing guests. "He sells alcohol illegally," said some young women, walking between the drinks and the flowers. "Once he killed a man who found out he was related to an important German leader and maybe even the devil. Pass me a rose, sweetie, and give me the last bit of that drink in the crystal glass." One time, I wrote down the names of the people who came to Gatsby's house that summer. I used an old train schedule. The paper is falling apart now, but I can still read the names. These names will show you what kind of people came to Gatsby's parties. They were happy to enjoy his house, but they didn't really know anything about him. From East Egg, I remember. The Chester Beckers, the Leaches, a man named Bunsen. I knew him from Yale. Dr. Webster Civet, he drowned last summer in Maine. The Hornbeams, the Willie Voltaires. A family called the Blackbucks. They always sat in the corner and looked down on everyone. The Ismays, the Christies, actually Hubert Auerbach and Mr. Christie's wife. Edgar Beaver, whose hair turned white one winter for no reason. Clarence Endive also came from East Egg. He visited only from farther away on Long Island. There were the Cheadles, the O.R.P. Schraders, the Stonewall Jackson Abrams, from Georgia, the Fishguards, the Ripley Snells. Snell stayed for 3 days before he was sent to prison. He was so drunk that a car ran over his hand. The Dancy's S.B. Whitebait. He was over 60 years old. Maurice Say, Flink the Hammerhead's beluga. He sold tobacco, and his girls from West Egg. These people came. The Poles, the Mulready, Cecil Roebuck, and Cecil Schoen Gulick, a state senator. Newton Orchid, he ran a film company. Eckhost, Clyde Cohen, Don S. Schwartz, the son, and Arthur McCarty, all worked in the movie business. The Catlips, the Bembergs, G. Earl Muldoon, his brother later killed his wife. De Fontano, a promoter. Ed LeGros, James B. Rotgut Ferret, the De Jongs Ernest. Lily. These guests came to gamble. When Ferret walked into the garden, it meant he had lost all his money. The stock market needed to go up the next day for him to earn it back. A man named Klipspringer stayed at Gatsby's house so often that people called him the boarder. I don't think he had any other place to live. Many people from the theater also came. Gus Wayeyes, Horace Odenaven, Lester Meyer, George Duckweed, Francis Bull. Other guests from New York included the Chromes, the Backhissons, the Dinnikers, Russell Betty, the Corrigans, the Kellehers, the Dewars, the Scullys S. W. Belcher, the Smirks, the Quinns. They were young and now divorced. Henry L. Palmetto, he killed himself by jumping in front of a subway train in Times Square. A man named Benny McClenahan always came with 4 girls. The girls were never exactly the same, but they looked and acted the same. It felt like they had all been there before. I forgot their names. Maybe Jacqueline, Consuela, Gloria, Judy, or June. Their last names sounded like flowers or rich families. If you asked them, they would say they were related to some important people. I also remember Faustino O'Brien, the Baedeker girls, young brewer, he lost his nose in the war. Mr. Albruxberger and Miss Hogg, his fiancée Ardita Fitzpeters, Mr. P. Jewett, he once led the American Legion. Miss Claudia Hip, who came with a man that might have been her driver, a prince. We called him Duke. I don't remember his real name. All these people came to Gatsby's house that summer. One morning, at 9 o'clock in late July, Gatsby's amazing car came up the rocky driveway to my house. The car's loud horn played a tune. This was the first time Gatsby had come to see me. Even though I had been to 2 of his parties, used his beach often, and even flew in his hydroplane. Good morning, old sport. We're having lunch together today. I thought we could drive into town together, he said. He was sitting on the front of his car, moving with energy and style. It was the kind of easy movement you see in Americans who don't do heavy work but play a lot of sports. Gatsby always seemed full of energy, tapping his foot or moving his hands. He was never completely still. He saw me looking at his car with interest. "Nice, isn't it, old sport?" he said. He jumped down so I could see it better. "Haven't you seen it before?" I had. Everyone had seen it. It was cream-colored, shiny, and very long. It had many boxes on it, one for hats, one for food, one for tools. The car also had many windshields that reflected the sunlight. We sat behind thick glass on green leather seats and drove into the city. In the past month, I had only talked with Gatsby a few times. He didn't say much, which made me stop thinking he was important. I started to see him as just a rich neighbor with a fancy house. But this ride was strange. We hadn't even left West Egg Village when Gatsby started acting nervous. He didn't finish his sentences and kept hitting his knee with his hand. "Tell me, old sport, what do you think of me?" he suddenly asked. I didn't know what to say, so I tried to give a polite answer. "Well, I'm going to tell you about my life," he said. "I don't want you to believe the crazy stories people say about me." So he did know that people talked about him in strange ways. "I'll tell you the honest truth," he said, holding up his hand like he was swearing in court. "I'm the son of rich parents from the Middle West. They're all dead now. I grew up in America, but studied at Oxford. Everyone in my family went to Oxford. It's a tradition." He looked at me quickly. Now I understood why Jordan Baker didn't believe him. He said the word Oxford in a strange way, too fast, like it made him uncomfortable. Because of that, I started to wonder if he was really telling the truth. Something about him seemed suspicious. "What part of the Middle West?" I asked casually. "San Francisco." "I see. My family died, and I inherited a lot of money." He said it seriously, like remembering it made him sad. I thought he might be joking, but when I looked at him, I believed him. After that, I lived like a young prince in Europe, in Paris, Venice, and Rome. I collected jewels, mostly rubies, hunted wild animals, painted for fun. I did it all to try to forget something very sad. I had to stop myself from laughing. His words sounded like they came from a movie. I imagined him in a turban, chasing tigers through a fancy European park. Then the war came, old sport. I was glad in a way. I wanted to die, but somehow I survived again and again. I joined as a first lieutenant. In one battle in the Argonne Forest, I took my group far ahead. We were alone for 2 days. There were 130 men and 16 machine guns. When help finally came, we had beaten back 3 German divisions. After that, I became a major. Every country on our side gave me a medal. Even Montenegro, a tiny country near the Adriatic Sea. Little Montenegro, he said proudly, smiling. His smile made it sound like he really cared about Montenegro. He seemed to understand its long history and struggles. His smile made me stop doubting him. It felt like reading an exciting magazine story. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a medal on a ribbon. He put it in my hand. That one's from Montenegro. I was surprised. It looked real. It said Ordere di Danilo, Montenegro, Nicholas Rex. Turn it over. It said Major J. Gatsby, for extraordinary bravery. Here's something else I always carry. A souvenir from Oxford. He showed me a photo of him with other young men in jackets. They were standing in a stone arch with towers in the background. That's me with my Oxford friends. The man next to me is now the Earl of Doncaster. Gatsby looked just a little younger in the picture, holding a cricket bat. Then I started to believe him. I imagined the tiger skins in his palace in Venice. I imagined him opening a box of rubies to make himself feel better. I'm going to ask you for something big today, he said, putting the medal and photo back in his pocket. So I thought you should know who I really am. I didn't want you to think I was just some nobody. You see, I often spend time with strangers. I move from place to forget that sad thing in my past. He paused. You'll hear about it this afternoon. At lunch? I asked. No, later today. I found out you're having tea with Miss Baker. You're in love with Miss Baker? No, old sport, I'm not. But she agreed to talk to you about something for me. I had no idea what he meant. I felt more annoyed than curious. I didn't invite Jordan Baker to tea just to talk about Gatsby. I guessed that whatever he wanted would be something crazy. For a moment, I wished I had never walked into his crowded garden. He didn't say anything else. As we got closer to the city, he became more serious and formal. We passed Port Roosevelt, where we saw ships with red belts. Then we drove through a poor area with old bars from the early 1900s. After that, we entered the Valley of Ashes, a gray, empty area. I saw Mrs. Wilson working hard at the gas pump. Our car's bright lights lit up part of Astoria. Then, while driving under a train bridge, I heard the sound of a motorcycle. A policeman rode up next to us. All right, old sport, Gatsby said calmly. We slowed down. He took a white card from his wallet and showed it to the officer. Oh, sorry, Mr. Gatsby, said the officer, tipping his cap. I'll remember you next time. What was that? I asked. Was that an Oxford card? No, Gatsby said. I once did the police commissioner a favor. Now he sends me a Christmas card every year. We crossed the Queensboro Bridge. The sun made flashing shadows on the moving cars. The city looked like white buildings and sugar cubes rising out of the ground. It looked magical, like it was built from dreams. We passed a hearse, a car for funerals covered in flowers. Behind it were two black cars with closed curtains. And behind those were happier-looking cars with friends. The people had sad faces, with the tired look of Southeastern Europeans. I was glad they saw Gatsby's beautiful car on their sad day. We also passed a fancy limousine driven by a white man. Inside were three well-dressed black people, two men and a woman. I laughed as they looked at us with proud, curious eyes. Anything can happen now that we've crossed this bridge, I thought. Anything at all. Even Gatsby. Yes, even Gatsby seemed possible. It was around noon when I met Gatsby for lunch. The restaurant was cool and underground on 42nd Street. It was very bright outside, so it took a moment for my eyes to adjust. I saw Gatsby talking to another man. Mr. Caraway, this is my friend, Mr. Wolfsheim, Gatsby said. Mr. Wolfsheim was a small man with a wide nose. He had a lot of hair growing from his nostrils. In the dark room, I could barely see his small eyes. I looked at him once. Mr. Wolfsheim said while shaking my hand, "And what do you think I did?" "What?" I asked, trying to be polite. But he wasn't really talking to me. He turned to Gatsby and said, "I gave the money to Catspaw and said, 'Don't give him anything until he shuts up.' And he did." Gatsby took both of us by the arm and led us into the restaurant. Mr. Wolfsheim stopped talking and looked around as if he was half asleep. "Highballs?" asked the waiter. "This is a nice place," said Mr. Wolfsheim, looking at the paintings on the ceiling. "But I like the place across the street better." "Yes, highballs," said Gatsby. Then he added to Mr. Wolfsheim, "It's too hot over there." "Yes, hot and small," Mr. Wolfsheim said. "But I have good memories there." "What place is that?" I asked. "The old Metropole," he said sadly. "I'll never forget the night Rosie Rosenthal was shot there. 6 of us were at the table. Rosie had eaten and drunk a lot. Then a waiter came and said someone wanted to speak to him outside. "All right," said Rosie, and he stood up. I pulled him back down and said, "If they want you, let them come in here. Don't go outside." It was 4 in the morning. If we had opened the curtains, we would have seen daylight. "Did he go?" I asked. "Of course," Mr. Wolfsheim said, clearly upset. He told the waiter not to take his coffee, went outside, and they shot him 3 times in the stomach. 4 of them were electrocuted, I remembered. 5, including Becker, said Mr. Wolfsheim. Then he looked at me. "I heard you want to start a business?" That question surprised me. But Gatsby quickly answered, "Oh no, this isn't the man." "No." Mr. Wolfsheim sounded disappointed. "He's just a friend," said Gatsby. "We'll talk about that later." "Sorry," said Mr. Wolfsheim. "I made a mistake." Our food came, and Mr. Wolfsheim began eating with small, careful bites. But his eyes moved slowly around the room. I think if I hadn't been there, he would have looked under our table too. "Look, old sport," Gatsby said, leaning closer to me. "I hope I didn't make you angry this morning in the car." He gave me that smile again, but I didn't smile back. "I don't like secrets," I said. "Why won't you just tell me what you want? Why does it have to come through Miss Baker?" Oh, it's nothing bad, he said quickly. Jordan is a good friend. She wouldn't do anything wrong. Suddenly, he looked at his watch, stood up, and left the room. I stayed with Mr. Wolfsheim. He had to make a phone call, said Mr. Wolfsheim. He's a good man. Handsome and polite. Yes, I said. He went to Oxford College, said Mr. Wolfsheim. Oh, I said. You know Oxford, right? It's a very famous school in England. Yes, I've heard of it. I met Gatsby just after the war, Mr. Wolfsheim said proudly. After talking to him for an hour, I knew he was a gentleman. The kind of man you'd take home to your mother and sister. He paused. I see you're looking at my cuff buttons. I wasn't, but I looked anyway. They were made of something white and hard. They're made from human teeth, he said. Wow, I said. That's very interesting. Yeah, he rolled up his sleeves. Gatsby is careful with women. He'd never even look at another man's wife. When Gatsby came back, Mr. Wolfsheim quickly finished his coffee and stood up. I enjoyed lunch, he said. But I'll go now before I stay too long. No need to hurry, Meyer, Gatsby said without much feeling. You're very polite, said Mr. Wolfsheim. But I'm from another time. You two talk about sports and girls and whatever else. He waved his hand. I'm 50 years old. I don't want to bother you anymore. He shook hands with us. His nose was shaking, and I wondered if I had upset him. He gets very emotional sometimes, Gatsby explained. Today's one of those days. He's well known in New York. He's always on Broadway. Is he an actor? I asked. No. A dentist? No, he's a gambler, said Gatsby. Then he added calmly, he's the one who fixed the World Series in 1919. He fixed the World Series? I repeated. That shocked me. I knew about the 1919 World Series, but I had always thought it just happened somehow. I didn't think one man could change such a big thing, something so important to millions of people. How did he do it? I asked. He saw the chance and took it. Why isn't he in jail? They can't catch him, old sport. He's very smart. I paid for lunch. As the waiter brought my change, I saw Tom Buchanan across the room. Come with me for a minute, I said to Gatsby. I need to say hi to someone. Tom saw us and quickly walked over. Where have you been? He asked. Daisy's really angry that you haven't called. This is Mr. Gatsby, I said. Mr. Buchanan. They shook hands quickly. Gatsby looked uncomfortable. How have you been? Tom asked me. Why did you come all the way up here to eat? I had lunch with Mr. Gatsby, I said. I turned to Gatsby, but he had already disappeared. One day in October 1917, Jordan Baker sat straight on a chair in the tea garden of the Plaza Hotel and told me this story. I was walking outside, she said. Sometimes on the sidewalk, sometimes on the grass. I liked walking on the grass better because my shoes had rubber soles from England that held the ground well. I wore a new plaid skirt that moved in the wind. The red, white, and blue flags on the houses made a tut-tut sound, like they didn't approve. Daisy Faye's house was big, with the biggest lawn and the biggest flag. She was 18 years old, 2 years older than me. She was the most popular girl in Louisville. She wore white clothes and drove a small white car. All day, the phone rang with young Army officers from Camp Taylor asking to see her. When I walked by her house that day, Daisy was sitting in her white car with a soldier I didn't know. They were looking at each other so closely that she didn't see me until I was very close. "Hello, Jordan," she called. "Come here." I felt special. I admired her a lot. She asked me to tell the Red Cross she couldn't help make bandages that day. The soldier looked at Daisy in a very loving way. It was romantic, and I always remembered it. His name was Gatsby. I didn't see him again for over 4 years. And I didn't recognize him when we met later on Long Island. That was in 1917. The next year, I started dating and playing in golf tournaments. I didn't see Daisy much. She spent time with older people, if she went out at all. People said she once tried to run away to New York to say goodbye to a soldier. Her family stopped her, and she didn't speak to them for weeks. After that, she only dated local boys who couldn't join the army. By the next fall, she was happy again. She had her debut party after the war ended. In February, people said she was engaged to a man from New Orleans. But in June, she married Tom Buchanan from Chicago. It was the biggest wedding Louisville had ever seen. Tom brought 100 people in private train cars and rented a whole hotel floor. The day before the wedding, he gave Daisy a pearl necklace worth $350,000. I was one of her bridesmaids. I went to her room before the wedding dinner. She was lying on the bed, beautiful, but very drunk. She had a bottle of wine in one hand and a letter in the other. "Congratulate me," she said. "It's my first drink, and I like it." "What's wrong, Daisy?" I asked. I was scared. I had never seen a girl like that before. She pulled the necklace from the trash and said, "Take these downstairs. Give them back. Tell them Daisy has changed her mind." Then she cried and cried. I ran to get her maid. We locked the door and put her in a cold bath. She wouldn't let go of the letter. She even took it into the water. Only when the paper started to fall apart did she let me leave it in the soap dish. After that, she said nothing. We gave her smelling salts and ice and helped her back into her dress. When we walked out, she was calm and wearing the pearls. The next day at 5 p.m., she married Tom like nothing had happened. Then they went on a 3-month honeymoon to the South Seas. I saw them later in Santa Barbara. Daisy seemed so in love with Tom. If he left the room, she would look around nervously and ask, "Where's Tom?" She would sit on the beach with his head on her lap, smiling and touching his face gently. It was sweet and strange to watch. That was in August. A week after I left, Tom had a car accident. He hit a cart on the road. The girl with him was hurt. Her arm was broken. She was a maid at the hotel. The newspapers talked about it. The next April, Daisy had a baby girl. Then they went to France for a year. I saw them in Cannes and Deauville, and later they came back to live in Chicago. Daisy was popular there too. She had many young, rich, wild friends. But she kept a good reputation, maybe because she didn't drink. That helped her stay quiet and in control. Maybe Daisy never had affairs, but there was something special in her voice. About 6 weeks ago, she heard Gatsby's name again for the first time in years. Do you remember when I asked you if you knew Gatsby in West Egg? After you left, Daisy came to my room and woke me up. What Gatsby? She asked. When I described him, she said in a strange voice that it might be the same man. That's when I realized Gatsby was the soldier from her car. By the time Jordan finished her story, we had been driving through Central Park for a while. The sun had gone down behind the tall buildings. We heard children singing on the grass. I'm the Sheik of Araby. Your love belongs to me. At night when you're asleep, into your tent I'll creep. That's a strange coincidence, I said. It's not a coincidence at all, Jordan replied. What do you mean? Gatsby bought that house just to be near Daisy. Suddenly, Gatsby made sense to me. He hadn't just been dreaming of stars that night years ago. He had a real goal. Gatsby wants to know, Jordan said, if you'll invite Daisy to your house one afternoon. Then he'll come over. I was surprised. He had waited 5 years. He bought a huge house and threw parties, just for a chance to see her across the bay. Did I have to know all of this before he could ask for one small favor? He was scared, Jordan said. He thought you might say no. Gatsby looks tough, but deep down he's not. Then I asked, why didn't he ask you to invite her? He wants her to see his house, she said. And your house is right next door. Oh, I said. I think Gatsby hoped she'd come to one of his parties, said Jordan. But she never did. Then he started asking people if they knew her. I was the first one. That's why he asked for me at the party. He didn't want to do anything strange. He just wanted to see her next door. When I told him you were a close friend of Tom's, he almost gave up. He doesn't really know Tom. But he reads the Chicago papers just to see if Daisy's name appears. It was dark now. As we passed under a small bridge, I put my arm around Jordan's shoulder. I invited her to dinner. Suddenly, I wasn't thinking about Daisy and Gatsby anymore. I was thinking about Jordan, so calm, strong, and clear. A line from somewhere echoed in my head. There are only the pursued, the pursuing, the busy, and the tired. Daisy should have something good in her life, Jordan said softly. Does she want to see Gatsby? I asked. She's not supposed to know, said Jordan. Gatsby wants it to be a surprise. Just invite her to tea. As we left the park and reached the bright lights of the city, I thought, I wasn't like Gatsby or Tom. I didn't have a dream girl. So I pulled Jordan closer. She smiled her cool, mysterious smile, and I leaned in again, closer this time, to kiss her.